Hello, students of class 12th. How are you all? I hope all of you are fine. I also hope all of you are doing well in your life. I hope all of you are keeping yourself positive and motivated in this time when most of us are kind of, enclosed in our own spheres. It is important for all of us to keep ourselves positive and motivated, and at the same time, it is important for all of us to keep ourselves focused also, because all of us want hope and believe that this temporary phase will definitely get over very soon, and all of us are going to meet up again with the new hopes and with new energies in our hearts and mind. But till that time, please keep yourself focused and keep yourself involved in something positive and in something constructive, right? So, in today's video, I'm going to share with you the interpretation of the poem Keeping Quiet, which is written by Pablo Neruda. I'm using the textbook. I'm using this particular textbook as the source of reference, and I expect you also to keep the notebook, keep a notebook, a pencil, pen with you along with the textbook. If you have it, please do try to get, because since the books are available now, most of the bookshops are open, most of the shops, markets are open around us. So please do acquaint one textbook and keep it as I'm talking to you about the poem. And it would be really great if you are able to sit with a notebook and a pencil with you along with the textbook, so that when I'm talking to you, you can keep on taking notes and write down whatever the important details you would like to note down, right? So in this particular video, as I told you, I'm going to talk to you about the third poem of your textbook, Flamingo, Keeping Quiet, which has been written by the poet called Pablo Neruda. And Pablo Neruda basically comes from Chile. Now, Chile is a South American country, and South American countries have their own cultural backgrounds, have their own linguistic richness, and have their own shares of political struggles. I would request you to find out more about this particular country, Chile, and about the writer Pablo Neruda on your own in the next video, because in this particular video I intend to complete only half of the poem. I'll just discuss half of the poem with you. In the next part, I'll complete the rest half of the poem, and along with that, I'll also talk to you about Pablo Neruda. But then, till then, you have some time. Please go to internet, search some good information and important information about Pablo Neruda. He's a very interesting poet. He's a very interesting poet because the way he uses images is extremely versatile, and it's extremely important to understand why does he use a particular image and how does it contribute towards making his poetry more energetic and more enriching. So you need to know more about Pablo Neruda. For example, there is a very famous poem of Pablo Neruda where he is describing his country Chile with the help of the images of vegetables and fruits. So there is one point where he describes a salad, a big salad which contains fruits also, and it has vegetables also, and then with the help of the salad he describes his country. If you are able to read this poem somewhere, then please do read it, and see and try to analyze the use of imagery in Pablo Neruda's poem. As of now, I'm not talking to you about a lot about Pablo Neruda, because please do some research work on your own, and then you can whatever the research you have done, whatever the findings you have been able to do about Pablo Neruda's life and work, you can share it with me either on WhatsApp, or you can share the same with me in the comment section below. With the next video, I'll talk to you in detail about Pablo Neruda. But as of now, let us begin with the poem Keeping Quiet. When you look at the poem Keeping Quiet, as I always tell you, it is important for you to first go through the poem in entirety, in its complete way, complete form. And whenever you read the poem, it is important, and this also I would have told you earlier, it is important for you to understand the overall sense of the poem. Try to understand the poem in its overall sense, in its context. Try to understand the context in which the poem has been written, and rather than just keeping yourself busy with understanding the meaning of each and every line, and sometimes getting down to the level of each and every word, because that really kills the the enjoyment that a poem is supposed to give you. So don't just approach a poem from the examination point of view. Approach a poem from the point of view of learning something about literature, and learning something about the poem itself. Right? I'm reading out the poem. Please follow in your books. Now we will count to 12 and we will all keep still. For once on the face of earth, let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much. It would be an exotic moment. Without rush, without engines, we all would be together in a sudden strangeness. Fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the men gathering salt would look at his hurt hands. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victory with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade, doing nothing. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what it is about. I want no truck with death. If we were not so single minded about keeping our lives moving, and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. Perhaps the earth can teach us, as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. Now I'll count up to 12 and you keep quiet and I'll go. This is the poem. Now, if you look at the poem, the structure of the poem, there is no, rhyming pattern here. There is hardly any rhythm here. The poem is extremely prosaic in its structure. Okay, it is as if you're reading a paragraph and not a poem. Because when we read a poem, we generally are used to read a poem in a certain pattern where there would be some rhyming schemes generally. If you remember the poem that you would have read in your junior classes, like Duck and the Kangaroo, uh, the last word of all the sentences would actually rhyme with the last word of the coming sentences. This is how generally the poem is written, and the reason was that it was meant to give a rhythm in the poem and a rhyming effect in the poem, because then the poem seems more interesting and it seems more readable. But here in this particular kind of a poem which Pablo Neruda is particularly writing, here you find that there is hardly any rhythm and a rhyming scheme over here. Similarly, something of the same structure you had seen in My Mother at 66 also, where in that poem also there was no rhyming scheme, there was no rhythm in the poem. So this is largely the poem where the writers are breaking, or the poets are breaking knowingly. Let me tell you, very knowingly. It is not an effort which has just come up unconsciously. No, this is very much a conscious choice of the poet to write in certain manner, because they're knowingly breaking down the rules and the structures of writing poem, and they're writing in a very unconventional form of writing poetry, because they want to tell you that the normality is something which is just a consensual idea. Normality is nothing where a group of people, knowingly or unknowingly, spokenly or unspokenly, have decided to be consent about, and that is how certain ideas and certain ways of life are called as normal, where similarly certain ways of writing in the poem are called as important, because if you break those rules, the poem cannot be interesting. So people like Kamala Das, Pablo Neruda, they are very knowingly breaking the rules of writing the poem in a conventional way, and then they are trying to tell you that unconventional poem could also be equally interesting, and they could equally be critical of life. They can force you to think, and in fact, the more unconventional is the structure of the poem, the more uncomforting does the reader gets, and the reader is suddenly just taken out of the field of his own comfort zone, and the reader is forced to think actually. Okay, because the reader is forced to think that is poem only for the entertainment purpose, and then the writers are saying that no, definitely not. Poems are nothing but lives, they are the serious reflections of life. And that is why you find in this particular poems, many poems actually you would read that there are this deliberate breaking away or just doing away of the rules of writing poetry, and the poems are far from anything but conventional way of writing, right? So let us just now look into the poem. I'm trying to go through it line by line, but if you read the poem, there's one thing that would have come to your mind by now, is that the writer, the poet or the speaker, let me just refer to the narrator over here as a speaker. So the speaker is asking us, the readers to keep quiet. Why is it that the speaker is asking us to keep quiet? Because we make most of a lot of noise. Is that the reason? Imagine about your class when a teacher enters generally after after kind of addressing you. The teacher, the first thing and the only thing the teacher most of the time speaks in the class is just to ask you to keep quiet. And the reason is that most of the class and most of the students cannot keep quiet, they just keep on talking. And the teacher would ask you to keep quiet because until you keep quiet and focus on something, it becomes impossible for the teacher to discuss anything important and serious in the class. But what could be the reason of the speaker asking over us, asking over here to all of us to keep quiet? We're making a lot of noise, and it's just asking the complete world to go keep quiet. What could be the reason? So this is one thing that has appeared into our mind when we have read the poem at on its own, or in its entirety. So now we will count to 12 and we will all keep still. Okay, say that let us just, it's going to be a joint venture. Everybody in the whole world just should count up to 12, and we all are going to keep quiet. We are going to keep mum. We're not going to speak anything. We're not going to do anything. We're not going to involve ourselves in anything. So that's what he's saying. And then he says, for once on the face of earth, let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much, right? So it's saying that at least for once, just for once, let's just keep quiet. And we all should just not speak, be it any language, because there are variety of languages that are present on this world, and let us not speak a lot on this particular in this particular languages. Let's stop using languages altogether. We need not take any pride in the language. Now, does this remind you of anything that you have read in this particular course? Yes, of course. The pride that we take are in a language, and how I say that languages are extremely important for human communities, and especially for forming your own identities. We have seen that in the first chapter, the last lesson written by Alfonso Dode, where he talks about the importance of language. If you remember, as Germans had imposed their own language on the two districts of France, Alsace and Lorraine, right? So similarly, now here he is saying that all those pride that we have been taking, the pride and the hurt that we have been taking in our languages, we should just stop doing that. Do not speak in any language. Just keep quiet for some time, and let's not move our arms so much. So your arms are the parts of your body, okay? So they basically reflect the working capacities. We generally work with the hands, do we not? So what happens is that let's not move our hands for a while and just keep quiet. Let's not speak anything. It's like just sitting in a state of meditation. In yogic meditation, you're supposed to just sit quiet and still without speaking anything, without moving your bodies, right? So this is how the speaker is asking us to get into a state of meditativeness or in a state of silence for some time. It would be an exotic moment. So if we are able to achieve this particular idea, if all of us are able to do this, if all of us are able to follow it, then it is going to be an exotic moment. Exotic is close to supremely and divinely beautiful, right? So it will be so, if we are able to do what that has been told to us in the first stanza, if you're able to do that, then the moment will be exotic completely, without rush, without engines. We all would be together in a sudden strangeness. Okay, so we all would be able to connect to each other in a sudden strangeness if we are able to keep quiet, as we have been told by the speaker in the earlier stanza, right? So this is what he's telling us the consequence is going to be of keeping quiet or becoming silent for some time. In silence, we all are going to find a bonding. We all are going to be connected to each other. Now, this idea might seem a little strange to you, but think about the present times. This is probably the most perfect time of reading and understanding this poem. I'm not glorifying pandemic in any way. I'm not at all asking that this, I'm not at all saying that this particular time is good, not at all. But this is definitely, if you think very closely, if you think quietly, then this is definitely a time where we all can utilize this time as an opportunity of keeping quiet and staying silent. This is also what we all have been doing. Imagine the times of the earlier days of lockdown, where almost the roads, and the places outside were completely deserted. People were all inside, and you could see how, a variety of animals were coming out of their the places of inhabitation, and they were coming out and they were roaming freely on the roads. And many birds, many kind of birds, which we hadn't seen for years and years together, have just started emerging out. And then you could actually see the beauty of nature, and we also realized our place as only the sharers of this particular planet and not the dominators of the planet. So this is the right time of reading this poem. This is the time when we should be actually keeping quite silent and introspect about our position on this particular planet, and also our a position as a sharer, that we also live here. We not only live here, we're not the only one living here, but we are also the living beings who are living here along with variety of other living beings, right? So this is what he's saying. It's going to be an exotic moment. The minute we're going to keep quiet, we all are going to, bond feeling, we're going to understand the bond with each other, like we have understood how a very minute invisible microorganism has governed all our lives. We understand this is the time that, we cannot help ourselves by just secluding ourselves. It is important for us to keep helping each and every other human being. It is, if one person in your neighborhood is sick and infected, you have all the reasons to get sick and infected. Therefore, you cannot just keep yourself limited in your own house and think that, okay, if I'm going to stay back in home, I'm going to stay safe. You need also to take care of what your neighborhood and your neighbors are doing. And you have to equally take care of your neighbors with love and with sympathy. And you need to understand that your health inevitably depends upon their health and their actions, actually. So we have to keep in, moderately in touch with our neighbors and ensure that all of them are also keeping quiet and safe and healthy, because your health also depends upon their health, is it not so? So in this way, this particular coronavirus has helped us to understand how we all are connected with each other. I'm not just talking about India. I'm not just talking about Uttarakhand. I'm not just talking about one particular state of this of particular country. I'm talking about complete world. How a very minute little invisible microorganism, coming up from one city of a particular nation, had spread itself from throughout the world. It had spread itself in the complete world, which tells us that we all are connected. We are not secluded. You might never have traveled abroad. You may have never crossed your national boundaries, but something and someone has crossed that boundaries, and now it is in your neighborhood. So you know that we all are connected. And this is exactly what Pablo Neruda is saying in this poem, when he's saying that just keep quiet, stay silent, and you're going to feel that, that bonding, that sense of brotherhood. And then you're going to realize that, this is not just a very philosophical idea, I must say. I'm saying that this is the right time of reading this poem, because we can actually practically feel that the feeling of bonding and brotherhood is necessarily practical. It's not just philosophical. We all are seeing, as I just told you, how we all of us are completely connected with each other, right? And this pandemic has actually made helped us to realize that we all are connected. I have never been to China. I have never been to America. I have never been to any other place outside this country, but I have high reasons of getting infected, or coming in touch with this virus. How is this happening? If I have never been outside, how is it that I am at a risk of getting infected? Because human beings are connected with each other, isn't it? And therefore, he's saying that we all would be together in a certain strangeness. Strangeness because we have only known one way of getting in touch with people. The only way that we have known to get in connection with people is to communicate. We have felt that physical communication is something which helps you to get closer to people. But a new idea that has been introduced to us by Pablo Neruda is that he's saying you can connect with people in silence. And that is why he's calling this whole idea as a strange, because we are not very well acquainted with this idea of silence. Although in Indian culture there is a very big importance, a high importance of meditation, which has been taught to us into the yogic sciences, and how yoga has been promoting and it has been asking us to keep quiet at least for 10 minutes every day, because in silence, according to yoga, in silence lies wisdom. So this is what exactly Pablo Neruda is telling us, and this should not be a new idea to Indians, because we have such a rich culture of yoga in our own country. So we must understand that meditativeness is something where you can recover yourself, you can find yourself, and at the same time you can very easily find your own position in this whole universe and in this whole world, and you realize how connected we all are with each other. Okay, moving on to the next one. Oh, and anyway, I'm just moving, on the same stanza. This is the third stanza, and he says it would be an exotic moment because it will be a divinely beautiful moment where we all would be together without any rush. There will not be any rush, there will not be any engines, there will not be any vehicles like it used to be a few days before during the time of lockdown, where we all were inside our homes. There were no vehicles outside, there were no engines outside, and we all were just sitting inside our homes, right? And we all are going to be together in this sudden strangeness, and we all are going to feel that feeling of bonding. And this is one consequence that will happen if we all are going to keep count up to 12 and then keep going to keep silent. What could be the next this next consequence? Fishermen in the cold city would not harm whales, and man gathering salt would look at his hurt hands. Okay, so what will happen is that if we are able to achieve this, and to a certain extent now we have been able to achieve this in some part of the world at least, and in our own country we have very recently achieved this, where the fishermen whose profession and occupation is basically to catch fishes in order to earn bread for his family, he will not harm whales. Now whales are one of the most biggest mammals on this planet, and do you know they are at the risk of getting extinct because so much of fishing activities have been taking place recently that whales are at the risk of getting extinct. So if you're able to keep silent, then probably the fishermen will not hunt the whales, which means the hunting of a fisherman of a whale refers to an act of violence. Basically, it's an act of violence, because killing something or somebody to fulfill your own need, from your perspective, from human perspective, this might be justified and this might be correct, but from the perspective of another living being, this is not a very justified idea. So it is still a violence, even if somebody is doing it for fulfilling his or her own family's need. This act of violence would stop largely. This is not just a target on the fishermen, but whole lot of people who keep on committing violence. And violence is not just physical, you must understand. Violence is mental, violence is emotional also. So what happens is that he says that this act of violence would certainly keep calm down the minute we're going to achieve this introspection. And then he says that the man gathering salt would look at his hurt hand. At the same time, if you would have moved towards the southern part of the country, you would find near the beaches of the seas and the oceans, what happens is that at the beaches they make certain areas, they create certain spaces where the water of the ocean is collected, and then it is left out there, and because of the sunlight the water get evaporated, and what remains behind is the salt. Then this salt is refined in the factories, and then you get them as for their eating purpose. So there is a man who collects this salt. Now collection of the salt is also referred to as a self-inflicted violence, because once a person collects the salt is because it's not a very plain powder like a talcum powder. It has its little granules in it, which through a very continuous and uninterrupted practice for a long time may cause some hurt in your hand. And then once you get those hurt, the collection of salt only enhances it further, because it it just enhances your injury further, and it inflicts a lot of pain. But then the person, the salt gatherer, has to do it because that is his occupation once again, that is his profession once again. And if he's not doing it, then probably he might not be able to win bread for his family. So that is what he's saying, that for once actually let us just keep quiet and stop inflicting violence on others and on ourselves also, because it's not human beings are just inflicting violence on others, they're also inflicting violence on them, which is equally harmful. It is no less of a sin of committing or inflicting violence on oneself, right? It's not less of a sin. It does not make you make you does not make that particular crime justifiable. So you need to be kind to others, you need to be kind to yourself also, you need to forgive others, you need to forgive yourself also. And this is the time when we have been meeting with, or we have just been hearing some really sad news about a very young person committing suicide, and which is again an act of self-inflicted pain and extreme level of violence, which should not be done. This is what the poem is just asking us. Just keep quiet and think about your life, and think about what is it that you want from your life. The solutions would be there. If there is a problem, there will be solution. But then the problems are created by us. The solution will also come from within. It will not come from outside. The solution of a problem will always, always, and always come from within. The need is to keep quiet and to be meditative and to think about it. Okay, so today I'm just completing these three stanzas. In next of the video, I'll complete another part of the poem, and I'll deal with the next of the important issues in the poem. But till then, you just go through this particular part of the poem and write it down so that you have understood all the ideas that have been just discussed by me. You can have your own interpretation of the poem also. If you do, please do let me know, and you can put all these ideas into writing. It's important for you to put them in writing, because once you write it down, it becomes more clearer in your mind. And next important thing that you're going to do is to know or gather some more information about Pablo Neruda, and just get back to me either in my WhatsApp group or in the comment section below. I hope you have learned something from the poem and from the video. I hope you have found this particular video more helpful. At the same time, I request all of you to stay once again focused and positive about your life. These are the times when we all have been living quite enclosed life, I understand, but turn these times, these trying times, into opportunities. If you look closely, these are wonderful opportunities to get together to your family, talk to your parents, talk to your siblings, talk to your friends, and talk to your teachers also, if you are interested, because your teachers are also your friends. Okay, I hope you're enjoying this time, and I also hope you have enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching this video. I would see you again very soon. Thank you so much.